So like for the past couple of months or so, world models have been talked very much because it's being said to be the next step after LLMs to make the step towards AGI. So in that story, like Google also had their own world model research going on. So I think about 3 or 4 days ago, they'll also launched their Google Genie 3. Actually, they had launched Genie 3 back in August 2025, but this is the first time they have launched it for the public. By public, I mean the people who have the Ultra subscription, not just the Pro subscription. The I think is the topmost level of subscription, the Ultra tier. So only they have the access to this. So briefly, I'll just go over the timeline for Genie. So, so Genie 1, they first announced it back in 2024, February of 2024. And it was mostly a research paper, no such demo or anything. If you just look at this, it's just a research paper, and you can look into this. That was all about it. So Genie 2 was like they announced it in December 2024. And in there they gave a lot more descriptions about what this is, what happens, and so on. So this is the official blog. I think it talks about a lot of those things and so on. And so this is a long blog, so they give a detailed description of what Genie 2 is all about. Now finally on August 2025, they bought Genie 3. So Genie 3 is just an upgrade, like as per the demo is concerned, there's nothing fundamentally different, but it just the quality has improved. I think there are some demos here. So here you can see like the I think so the resolution and also the duration has improved over Genie 2 if you just look at here. So on the left you have Genie 2, it has ended. Genie 3 continues on, and also the quality is better. So let's just look at this demo as well. So okay, so let's just look at this video. Let's see what it says.
What you're seeing are not games or videos. They're worlds. Each one of these is an interactive environment generated by Genie 3, a new frontier for world models. With Genie 3, you can use natural language to generate a variety of worlds and explore them interactively, all with a single text prompt. Let's see what it's like to spend some time in a world. Genie 3 has real-time interactivity, meaning that the environment reacts to your movements and actions. You're not walking through a pre-built simulation. Everything you see here is being generated live as you explore it. And Genie 3 has world memory. That's why environments like this one stay consistent. World memory even carries over into your actions. For example, when I'm painting on this wall, my actions persist. I can look away and generate other parts of the world. But when I look back, the actions I took are still there. And Genie 3 enables promptable events, so you can add new events into your world on the fly. Something like another person, or transportation, or even something totally unexpected. You can use Genie to explore real-world physics and movement, and all kinds of unique environments. You can generate worlds with distinct geographies, historical settings, fictional environments, and even other characters. We're excited to see how Genie 3 can be used for next-generation gaming and entertainment. And that's just the beginning. Worlds can help with embodied research, training robotic agents before working in the real world, or simulating dangerous scenarios for disaster preparedness and emergency training. World models can open new pathways for learning, agriculture, manufacturing, and more. We're excited to see how Genie 3's world simulation can benefit research around the world.
So this was from the August 2025 launch where they first described it. So from now and the January launches, fundamentally, as I've said, nothing has changed. It's only that now it's available for the public. So let's look at some of the demos here from the recent launches. So the first one was 4 days ago. Okay, so this was all about all the demos and everything. Now, so that's the part on that's the explainer about what Genie is. So I'm trying to structure it in that form, like what are the skills, what are the areas that I want to improve upon? The first one is to be able to explain some things, but since it's quite simple to understand, so I won't go much into the technical details here. The second part is the insights and opinions. That's what I think about those things. So as I've said, like decoding the future is all about like there's the decoding the future research part and the decoding the future part. So decoding the future is mostly for this target audience, like people who are interested in futurism and philosophy. And the research aspect of it is mostly for investors and people in the business world. So my point for not just for this story, like for any story that I cover, my objective would be to also provide my insights on what I think this development means for these two target audiences. So that's what I'm trying to do here. So for investors, it's so previously what I said is that I wrote an article, I think about 2 weeks ago, where I mentioned about the change of narrative around Google. So about 1 year ago, the whole thing was like maybe I think I've talked about it with you, but I'll still reiterate it. So Google, the thing about Google was that search, like with the search, people are not using the traditional search, people are using AI, so maybe Google is going to fall behind. They're going to become irrelevant, like AI is going to come up. That was this story about 1 year ago. But then things started to change. Like the Gemini, people started to use Gemini more than the other, uh, if not more, but Gemini definitely did start to grow in terms of usage. I think there's a chart in this blog itself. Yes, this is it. So if you can see in 2023, about 50% of the LLM market share was for ChatGPT, because that was most people only knew about those things. And Google barely had about 7%, Anthropic had 12%, and so on. But if you come to 2025, but today, I mean, this is from, I think, September or October of 2025. So in late 2025, Google's market share has increased up to 20%. ChatGPT has decreased to 25%. In fact, Anthropic is the most used one, which is a bit surprising because I have never seen, at least at my workplace, nobody has been using Claude. Like Gemini and
Is
ChatGPT are
this
the most.
is this individual users or enterprise? Because I hear Anthropic is mostly used, or it has more market share in enterprise users.
Yes, even that's what I think. Like, that's why I'm surprised. I think it has to probably be a combined, because if you just look at the individual users, I don't think Anthropic is being used a lot by individual users. And Anthropic isn't even making the effort for bringing in individual users. Unlike you can see all the other LLMs like ChatGPT, Gemini, even Perplexity, they are all trying to give like these subscriptions, free subscriptions, and so on to get the audience. But Anthropic is not making any effort. Even if you use Anthropic, like after a few rounds of conversations, they will say, okay, you have to upgrade to Pro, and like they are not making any effort to bring it to the uh, individual users. Their primary market is the enterprise. So I think it is most probably a combination of both this chart. But anyways, it has ChatGPT's market share has gone down a lot, and Gemini's has increased quite a bit. So that's one thing. And the other thing that I mentioned here is that this was the thing that's most interesting about Google. So back in November 2024, when Gemini 3 was released, so they have said that most of its training, I don't know if it was most, or probably it was all of the training was done on uh, Google's
TPUs, yeah.
own, yes, TPUs. So they did not use NVIDIA's hardware. So which means that they also have the hardware. And I think the Claude's latest model, I don't remember the exact name, but whatever the latest model that was launched back in late November 2025, it was also trained, most of it was trained on Google's TPUs. So from that point of view, if you look at the silicon part here, so from the hardware part also they have the infrastructure, they have the assets. From the infrastructure wise, they have the Google Cloud Platform. Uh, Obviously, from the model part, they have these things and applications, Gemini, Genie, and all of those things, and all the ecosystem integration that they have. So Google has all of them. In fact, they are the only company that has uh, a hold on each and every st aspect of the whole value chain. No other company has or any of this. In fact,
Yeah.
Microsoft has they're in the worst position. Apart from the infrastructure, they don't have anything else of their own. So yeah. So again, the point I'm trying to make here is that this thing about world models. So as I've said previously, that the world models are the next step in the race to AGI or ASI, whatever they're trying to do here. And you can see that Google is again, they're also at the frontier. They're not lagging behind. So from an investor's perspective, holding on to or at least buying Google stock is a very good thing. Like it's a positive thing from my point of view. Again, as a disclaimer, I should say that this should not be taken as professional advice because since I'm going to but this is going to go into the internet, and since I am not a professional advisor, so I should say that. But again, from a personal perspective, it's a good thing. In fact, I do own shares of Google Alphabet. So yes. And another insight from investors is a potential for VR products. So I think so even in our last conversation, you talked about a lot of VR products, AR VR products. So, and we even talked about it like what's the actual future of AR VR products? Like where is it going? On the one hand, I talked about Meta closing down or at least downsizing their reality labs, the AR VR department. But on the other hand, we are seeing a lot of new companies are launching AR VR products. So I think this might work there. And I'll come back to this again but first I want to talk about a bit of this because this will again bring back to here how VR works. So what does it mean for a group of people, futurists, people who are interested in futurism and so on? So Star Trek, so they have one of the recurring technologies there is something called the holodeck. So holodeck is something, it's a virtual world that people create there. And it's a very realistic world. You can go there. People like they can use it for any kind of purposes, for training, for relaxation. Because what happens is that most of the crew in Star Trek, they are just they live in the spaceship, they move from one place to another. So most of the time they are stuck in the spaceship. So holodeck provides them an opportunity to simulate a real world, to relax, or maybe to train or do any kind of things. So these world models that have been created by Genie, it it is a very early stage version of what holodeck is. Of course, holodeck is far more advanced. It is you can't distinguish between reality and what's fake. So the virtual worlds created by Genie are those kind of things. Because what happens is that if you want to create a AR VR, if you want to create a VR world like manually. It's like game development. Like it takes so much time to create a virtual world, game setting, if you want to do it manually. But here you don't have to do manually. You just have to type a prompt and the whole world is created. So it reduces the time exponentially. So any user can now go and say, okay, I want to, suppose I'm training for a match. So like you type something and a whole scenario is created. Okay, this environment has been created. So this thing is there. Now, how it connects to VR products is that right now it's only on a 2D screen. You type it and it's on a 2D screen. You can't, the best you can interact is through a mouse and keyboard. So it's nothing more than that. And also people are comparing this to video games. But again, the thing is that it's not a video game. The accurate term is interactive worlds. Okay, like you can control a character and roam around the world. But video games are more than just that. It requires like a mission, like it requires a lot more other game mechanics, not just being able to roam around. So obviously, I think from a game perspective also, it is going to be a lot more helpful for game developers, which I'll come back to again because part 2.3 I have this thing again. So I'll come back to that. But as I said, so far, this technology is only limited to the 2D screens. Now, this is where I think VR technology can integrate with this AI model, whatever the output this AI model creates, and finally it can bring those kind of the worlds that holodeck creates. Because now you can then prompt a virtual world, then put on your AR VR set, and then be a part of that world instead of it just having been on a screen. And I think now again, from an investor perspective, like the companies that are working on this kind of products, like integrating VR and AI, interactive AI worlds. So maybe there is a potential for those kind of products and startups and companies that are working on that. So maybe it might happen. And yes, apart from the other ones, I don't see. I have watched Star Trek. Yes, so that's why I know about holodeck. For Ready Player One, I watched that movie. So again, I get it how it can be possible because they also have virtual worlds. And Matrix again, I don't know how exactly it relates to Matrix. And and finally, Cyberpunk. I haven't played the game, but so since this is being mentioned by AI, so I looked it up, and I found that there's actually a mission out there, like in that game, where you have to get into someone's memory and do something like that. So I think yes, so somehow relates to that. Okay, now finally, I'm going to talk about this how it impacts games industries. So let us just hear what this video has to say, and then I'll put my thoughts.
If you look at stock prices across the games industry right now, you'll find that the entire games industry, quite a few prominent major companies in gaming have all crashed in their stock price. So right here, for example, Shinobi 602 highlighted on Blue Sky how the likes of Take-Two Interactive, Roblox, CD Projekt, Unity Software, among many more, have seen their stock price all dip in the same day. Even companies like Nintendo, you'll find that on that exact same day, January 30th, they saw a major dip in their stock price. So people might be wondering what the heck is going on. Well, Shinobi 602 very briefly explains it here, how all of this is a response to the launch of Google's Project Genie, with investors believing that it's basically over for video games being handcrafted and that video games will now all be made entirely by AI. So what is Project Genie? Well, right here we have a tweet from Google itself introducing Project Genie, an experimental research prototype powered by Genie 3, our world model, and lets you prompt an interactive world into existence and then step inside. So yeah, basically you type in prompts and you can interact with what output AI produces. So this individual typed in a photorealistic alpine meadow with blah, 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 and the character is a Shiba Inu, and that's kind of what Google's Project Genie generated. And this is an area where you can use your keyboard to navigate through. And this is something that's out right now for the public to be able to play around with and test out if they so desire. That is, if you want to pay for Google's AI Ultra subscription plan at the low price of just $125 a month for 3 months, and then you'll be paying $250 a month for the time that you want to use this feature. So yeah, insane price point that is clearly not meant for the masses, but for the people who did engage with Project Genie, what they found was that as impressive as this technology is, the fact that you can type in a couple words and describe the world that you want and the character you want, and you get some kind of interactive experience, the fact remains that this technology is incredibly limited. The fact that any of this can be done at all, again, really impressive. But whether it'll replace game developers, whether this is how games will be made moving forward, that aspect is questionable, especially given all the current limitations surrounding Google's Genie AI tool, which can only produce an interactive experience that lasts just 1 minute, only runs at 24 frames per second, and caps out at 720p. Not to mention that the experiences also lack stability, with one demo featuring a racetrack changing mid-gameplay. There's just the general lack of persistence with the stuff that AI generates. Project Genie's AI model is just trying to constantly make predictions, and so you could walk back and forth from one location to another, and you'll find that when you come back to a location, it'll have changed in some features. They're also not video games. There are no gameplay systems aside from just moving around and interacting with the 3D rendered world. So you can see right here some of the things that people have generated. There's like no audio. It's purely video. And yeah, I mean, again, the fact that this is at all possible is impressive, but you can see there's really nothing here. This is more of like this experimental toy that doesn't really work. And it's something that like is gonna be a nice novelty thing to play around with for a few hours, and then you move on because these are not video games. There are no gameplay systems. There's no real gameplay here. There are no goals to pursue. There's nothing really to overcome. You just kind of walk around what Google Genie here generates, and all of it still looks very uncanny. Like, for example, right here.
Okay, so mainly the rest of the video, it just talks about this thing. So in general, what are your thoughts about this Genie 3 and everything?
I don't have much thought. I think it's similar to when what is the VO? I think the video generation model was released, or even the image generation model. So there's a big hype. A lot of people talk about it. A lot of people use it, but then you quickly realize there's not much use case or practical day-to-day use case for most people. Surely a lot of, in terms of image generation, video generation, people are using it in different areas. Maybe for it has made it possible for a few people who would have otherwise had to hire someone to just quickly give a small prompt for whatever small video they were doing for whatever small reason. In that aspect, there is applicability for image generation and video generation. But at the initial hype that most people get, and the amount of, let's say, social media posts and stuff will over time decrease, because the practical use case, it's not really there, and it is even less for this, I think. Like he mentioned, as a technology, it is very impressive what we are able to, or what we are capable of, what we are capable of doing. But at its current scale, it's just novelty. Like he mentioned, you will play around it for a few hours. You'll be impressed by what it is able to do. But it is just a tech demo as of now. They are, yeah, I don't know what applications, like they mentioned, maybe for simulation, training robots, or actual human simulation, like training, disaster management, or whatever. So in those kind of situations, there are certain use cases. But yeah, this tech as of now, I think it is far from mature. And I do not know what the ceiling or peak is going to be. Like, for example, for LLMs, the initial few advancements were quite rapid. So we moved from one generation of LLMs to the other, and we saw quite a lot of progress. But since last year or so, even though there have been more advanced models coming out, the rate of progress has died down a bit. Same for image generation and video generation as well. So initially it wasn't that great, but it moved and moved, and it has reached a place where it is not progressing as fast. And I suppose this is almost like the beta version for this. Maybe there will be quite a few levels of progress, and then it will reach a peak. Surely it will not reach a level where it can just generate entire game on its own. At least not with the current level of hardware also. And I don't understand the tech architecture exactly, but maybe it will also require a lot of new novel progress in that area also for all of this to progress. So all in all, I think as a tech demo, it is a very interesting thing that it is possible to do, but for most people, there's no real use case here. And I think Google also knows it, maybe that is why they're not really releasing it to the mass as such, like they would do with Gemini 3 and stuff. This is really for tech enthusiasts who are willing to pay for this tech demo. And the reaction of the stock market, I don't know what the investors are. Who are these investors? Whenever this kind of things happens, I like question myself how they are supposed to be like smart people, who knows the industry and such. How come their reaction is always so dramatic that all the stock market is crashing, of the game company stock market is crashing is this way? It's going to bounce back anyways. But and yeah, I don't have much else to say.
Yeah, I think apart from this investor's perspective, like one thing I can say is that since nowadays a lot of investors are retail investors, like anyone can invest. So I think one of the comments, I don't know whether it was in this video or somewhere else, it says that investors are foolish. Like all you need to be an investor is some money, and that's all you need, and nothing else. Which is true. Like you can just create an account anywhere and start investing. And probably it's all those retail investors who are doing this kind of things, because the institutional investors definitely they have to be very smart people to get into those positions. So they are probably not the ones who are making those things, as far as I understand. That's one thing. And from the use cases also, uh, yeah, only a tool itself can't do much if the human is not skilled enough. Like when GPT-3, the first version came out, instantly within a month or two, there were people who were writing books and stories about those things, using those things. But these were the people who are already authors. So they were already very skilled in their thing, and this was just a tool that helped them. But even almost over 3 years have passed, and the quality the capabilities of those AI models has definitely increased. But still, I can say that 99% of the people can't write a 200-page book using this thing. Because, yeah, even 200, even most people won't be able to do that because they have never written a story. They don't know how to do this. Even suppose, yes, right now at, I'm working on a story, like not on a story, like at my work, I have to do some storytelling work. So it requires a lot of the actual storytelling part is hardly 100. I think it's not even 100 words. Let's say 100 words per chapter. So it's very less, but it requires a lot of thinking and from my part. So it requires a lot of previous knowledge from my part. So in fact, someone else could have done it instead of me. But why have they asked me to do this? Why not someone else? Because it requires previous knowledge. Because a tool is only a tool. If the person is not skilled enough, they can't do this. So what I'm trying to say is that people won't be able to make video games even if this technology becomes 10 times much more efficient, because only people who either have previous experience of building video games or have played video games for a long time, they know what is there in a video game. If you just give a random person this technology and say, okay, create a video game, they will have no idea how to even begin those things.
Yeah.
So that's from the use case perspective. And we have 2 minutes left. One last thing. Apart from the product, that's the one thing. But from a pure AI research perspective, one thing that's most important, that's very important or useful here is something called the counterfactuals. So, where did it go? There's something they mentioned here, generating counterfactuals for training agents. So counterfactuals are the alternate, like it's very common for humans. That's what we do. What we do is to suppose we are trying to take an action. And we do this for both very short terms and for very long terms as well. Suppose we're suppose we're making or deciding upon what career to choose. So we imagine our future, like what will, if I do this today, what will happen 10, 20 years from now? And even for a very short period, like suppose we're trying to cross the road, we look at the car and we see that, okay, this car is coming, and we do this very like subconsciously. Like this car is like this car is 100 meters from now, 100 meters away from now. So so from in like 5 seconds it will come here. So if I try to cross the road, it will hit me. So I won't move this. So those are counterfactuals. Like we are creating imaginary scenarios which are not actually happening in the real world. We are simulating the world in our mind. So AI so far did not have this technology. So right now with this, they will be able to simulate their own counterfactuals to be able to train themselves. That's what I'm trying to say. So anything else? Because less than 60 seconds are left.
No, nothing else.
So I think we can end.
Yeah.
Okay.